yourself a pause between when you experience the bodily aspects of anger and when you act on the anger is really vital. That's probably the first essential thing. And then, therapy and classes and other, even books, can teach us to use language that owns our own anger rather than attributing it to the person we're angry with. When we tell a loved one, "You make me angry," that gives them an irrational amount of control over our emotions. And it makes communication really difficult. I mean, it's simply a matter of verbiage. If we say, I become really angry when you do this. I own my anger and I specify what's causing it, and we can speak more productively about it.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman.
Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village SF, a nonprofit providing older adults in San Francisco with support to help age in place. Also by the Fromm Institute for Lifelong Learning and Shannon Greavy of A Bigger Room. I'm your co-host, Lynn Winter Gross.
Today on Not Born Yesterday, we're talking about anger. Not anger that comes from a specific incident, but rather the symbolic anger that too often becomes part of our view of what happens to older people. The always angry older neighbor, the curmudgeon who seems to be a regular image in movies and television programs, even the image of the Wicked Witch in children's books, who is always old, ugly, and mean, and looks angry. Where did these images come from, and why are they internalized in so many of us? And perhaps more importantly, why do we fear anger, and how does anger relate to aging?
Our guest today, Professor Amanda Barush, has been researching and teaching aging for over 40 years. She holds appointments as emeritus professor at the University of Utah and the University of Otago in New Zealand. As a tenured professor who has dealt with ageism over the years, she was surprised at her own anger when ageist remarks and actions were aimed at her. She found herself angry and decided to learn more about the sources of anger and how we can harness its energy for social change. Her book, Aging Angry, is designed to empower readers with an understanding of anger and its possibilities.
Professor Barush, welcome to Not Born Yesterday.
Thank you.
Do you find that many of us have mistaken ideas about aging and anger?
Well, I think so. Yes. Actually, I did a survey of several hundred older adults in the United States. And one of the most common beliefs they had about anger was that it's bad for your physical health. Getting angry is bad for your health, people believe. And I did extensive research on this and found more evidence that suppressing anger is bad for your health than I found persuasive evidence that anger itself, expressing anger itself is bad, can make us sick. It was popular in like the 19th century in medicine. There were actually articles that were written that said, if you have an angry disposition, it's going to hurt your liver, it's going to hurt your heart. And this was, of course, before our modern research methods had evolved. Even doctors were saying this. But these days, it's pretty clear that suppressing anger is probably more destructive.
I think we live in angry times right now, but I sometimes feel like we haven't been angry enough. Why haven't we been out on the streets marching and protesting the way we did in the 60s, for example?
Well, some people are. I mean, in fairness, the response to the murder of George Floyd was vigorous, and the Occupy movement is within recent times. So I actually think people are protesting, are using public protests to express anger. I think, though, that since we live in angry times, the fear of violence is pervasive in this country. And that might be one reason why some of us are reluctant to go into the streets and express our anger. Social media has been an incredible venue for expressing anger. And as you well know, the algorithms that they use actually foment anger. So maybe people are discharging it in that way, which seems fairly unproductive, really.
So you think that people that you interviewed, for example, are afraid of their anger?
Some are. I would say particularly women um, were afraid of it. Women, historically have been denied their anger, our anger. And so I think that there's sort of echoes of that in our reluctance to express it. Maybe some men, but I think it's particularly more common among women.
Was some of your experience with anger come from the fact that you were a woman and you were treated differently, or because you were older?
Oh, no question. Absolutely no question. Both of those, both age and my gender, contributed to the way I was treated. Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that?
Oh, yeah, sure. I taught at a university here for over 30 years. I think it was 32 years. And I was so lucky. I had colleagues I respected, and we had a culture that was healthy and supportive, and a dean who was a great communicator. And the dean, of course, retired, and a new dean came in. And for reasons that I didn't really understand at the time, I was flagged as the person he wanted to get rid of. And he made that clear from the beginning. When in a faculty meeting, he said he was establishing new standards for publications for the faculty, but they wouldn't apply to me because I was in the twilight of my career. And at the time, I was 62 years old, and I actually had no intention of retiring. And it shocked me that just hearing him say that was shocking. And I didn't know, was he kidding? Was he being cute? Was I supposed to laugh? Or was I? And all my colleagues, the faculty were looking at each other, just not knowing what was going on. But that was the red flag that things were going to get rough, and things did get rough for me in the college. And I was systematically treated to a kind of harsh criticism that it was like I could do nothing right. No matter what I did, it was wrong. And what was really fascinating to me, there was another dynamic to this, which was that when in private moments, the dean would compliment me on my appearance. This was a guy, and I had no idea how to deal with that bizarre disconnect between public criticism and, in fact, being made fun of in public, and humiliation, and private comments on how good I was looking that day. I thought it was very strange. So that in time, the sort of the constant criticism and this weird juxtaposition of flattery undermined my confidence. And I was in retrospect, I'm absolutely stunned by what a huge effect it had on my trusting my own judgment, my willingness to go into public settings and speak and trust that I would say the right thing. It was just utterly demoralizing and also enraging.
So, how did that rage lead you to write this book and do more research about anger?
Oh, that's kind of my MO, I think. When I think about it, most of my research as an academician came out of, or much of it came out of my personal experience. And so I kind of, it was a habit of mine, but also I was grasping for straws. I had planned to write a book on aging well when I retired. I thought that would be a really nice way to retire and meditate on the wonders of age and so forth. But when I sat down to draft a book proposal, I realized I had no interest in that topic because I was still too angry. So it was a way of processing my own anger productively.
Do you think that in the beginning you tried to ignore your anger?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I tried, yeah, because I don't know if not everyone experiences this, I've learned, but when I get really, really angry, I shake. My hands shake and my voice shakes, worst part. So it's very difficult for me to hide my anger. And so initially, yeah, I was trying to keep it down. And you lose face when you get angry in a public situation, particularly if you're a woman. You lose it. One of the things I learned and I reflected on as I was reading the book or writing the book was that the women who testified at the congressional hearings around our latest justice, there were women who testified that he had sexually assaulted them, and the journalists and others in the room, and later a cultural critic wrote that one of these women was so credible because she remained absolutely calm while describing pretty horrific experiences. And so if you can't remain calm, then you lose credibility in our public culture.
Some people hold on to anger as self-protection, like, for example, if they're angry at their family or angry at their parents, whatever it is. So what's the solution for that? Do they need to sit down maybe with a therapist or just with each other and try to resolve the issues rather than walk around with this anger all the time?
Yeah, well, finding the right therapist is a challenge for in any situation because of our mental health system being so understaffed. But that would be a go-to for me. If you're in a situation where you're holding on to anger to maintain distance, that you need to be safe, either emotionally or physically, that's not something I would undertake on my own to deal with. I think you need professional support at that point. Yeah, it's perfectly understandable. Also, I mean, you need to understand that the anger is perfectly understandable and it might be very protective. But at the same time, there might be a richer way to live. I interviewed a couple of guys who were in therapy, and one of them said that was the best lesson I learned is to let it go. Experience the moment of anger and let it go. He said, it doesn't need to ruin 2 weeks of my life. It's just 10 minutes. And so yeah, for many of us, we need to learn to let it go. But part of letting it go means taking it seriously and acknowledging it's real and it's justified.
So how about some tips on how we can use our anger positively?
Well, the first tip probably it's most anger management programs buy into this first tip, which is counting to 10. Because what happens when we get angry is our whole body, our lymphatic system, our circulatory system, our respiratory system goes into defense mode, attack mode. And so it does that before our frontal cortex can kick in. So giving yourself a pause between when you experience the bodily aspects of anger and when you act on the anger is really vital. That's probably the first essential thing. And then, therapy and classes and other, even books, can teach us to use language that owns our own anger rather than attributing it to the person we're angry with. When we tell a loved one, you make me angry, that gives them an irrational amount of control over our emotions. And it makes communication really difficult. I mean, it's simply a matter of verbiage. If we say it, I become really angry when you do this. I own my anger and I specify what's causing it, and we can speak more productively about it. So there are little devices that we can use, but the bottom line is kind of from a philosophical position, we need to accept our anger and take it seriously. It has lessons to teach us. And if we can listen to it, then we will learn them. And it's also a source of energy. I mean, it's a fabulous source of energy.
In retrospect, looking back at what happened to you originally, and all that you've learned about expression of anger, would you have done anything different?
Yeah, yeah. I think I would. I wish I had. I'm not sure I would have. I have no expectation that I would have. But I wish I had been more brave and been more direct. So I think if I'd been a little more brave and a little more calm, but I was just so confused.
I want to just quote something for your book where you said, I hope this book will persuade readers to take anger seriously. Channeled properly, anger can change our lives and our world. Could you
Yeah.
expand on that a little bit?
Oh, sure. Well, that was what I got mainly from the activists who I interviewed, because these were such inspiring people. They were people who were putting countless hours into protecting the environment or to protecting vulnerable populations. They were just so inspiring, and they gave me hope. It really gave me hope that we could pull this off. So yeah, I guess that's where that comes from. Also, yeah, there are a lot of people that just think anger per se is not healthy, like I said, and I really want to emphasize that it's a complex, highly evolved physical reaction.
I've been reading talk about older people and anger, about the raging grannies, the group
Yeah,
called the Raging Grannies.
aren't
I
they
don't know how they're
wonderful?
raging, but it's a great name.
Oh yeah, they're wonderful. They use humor. They're among several groups that use humor in their work. And that was a theme too when I spoke with activists, was their sense that you've also got to keep your sense of humor as you're going through all this.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. Our guest was Amanda Barush, author of Aging Angry. Today on News You Can Use, we're giving you information you can talk about with your friends, with strangers at a party, or even in your own defense when talking with your adult children. We want to dispel the myth about aging brains. If you believe that the older we are, the less our brains can absorb, you may be surprised to know that a research report says cognitive function does not decline as we age. In fact, most of us don't lose or even lessen our ability to think for ourselves. The study was designed to investigate the connection between cognitive health, aging, and decision making. The research was conducted by the MetLife Mature Market Institute and the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas at Dallas.
Their research revealed that older adult participants were more conscientious when they considered their options before making a decision. They avoided being over-focused on immediate solutions without considering other outcomes more often than the younger group.
Among the study's key findings are that healthy aging adults show no decline in decision making. Increased age alone was not a key factor in predicting impaired decision making. Conscientious decision making intensifies with age. A self-assessment revealed that older decision makers were more careful and organized than those in the younger age group. So now that we know that our brains are still working, go out and use them.
And that's our podcast for today. Our thanks to our guest, Dr. Amanda Barush, author of Aging Angry. You can learn more about Next Village SF at their website, nextvillagesf.org, and check out the frominstitute.org site, which offers a wide variety of college-level learning opportunities for older adults. Our theme music is from Hook Sounds. Jason Dahlstedt is our engineer, and Shannon Greavy is our social media consultant. And thanks for listening. We would like to hear what you would like us to discuss and discover. Please contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast.org and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. All of these are free and help us to know who our audience is. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.